Always choosing the most random spots to record. You see that house down there? That's the new build that somebody's working on just down the road from us. Notice how the roof is the part that's basically parallel with the street, and each floor just goes further and further down into the hill. So we're still kind of in the process of trying to go fully off-grid here in Jamaica, and for anyone who's thinking of doing a similar thing, there's a few things you might want to know first. Especially if you're somebody who watches a lot of US or UK off-grid content on YouTube like I do, because here is just different. I mean, you know, obviously it's a whole different country, so that means like different climate, different resources, different challenges. Everything's kind of got its own unique twist. And there's even a chance that if you want to go fully off-grid here, depending on your situation, you might have to go slightly backwards in some ways, but we'll talk about that later. So remember that house that we were just talking about? Stuff like that is a lot more common than you think. The countryside here is mostly mountains and hills, so it's not super common for people to have a ton of flat land to build on. Slight relocation because it's raining now. I should turn this into a countryside ASMR video. Anyways, because of the terrain, you're going to have to adapt in a number of other ways as well. For example, terracing your land to make it easier to grow crops. If you want animals, making sure that they can actually handle the steep terrain. Sourcing your water from springs rather than digging wells. You'll also find some resources here that you might not be used to. Like, for example, the amount of bamboo here is insane. Like, literally to the point where a lot of people see it as a nuisance because there's just too much of it. But you know what? Take advantage of it because it's got way more potential than most people realize. Might do a video on that later because I actually really want to build some stuff with it. The tropical climate here does also give you a solid chance of having food growing on your land before you even start planting your own stuff. I mean, it's not guaranteed. Like, I don't want to sell you a dream here. Every plot of land is different, but the odds are pretty decent. I mean, just on our land alone, we've got mango trees, coconut trees, ackee. These are looking like they'll be ready soon. June plum, cacao, sugarcane, breadfruit, oranges. The list goes on. But the darker side of the environmental factors here is hurricanes. And even though the seaside obviously gets it way worse than we do, surprisingly up here still gets hit pretty hard. Really strong winds, heavy rain. I wasn't here for this, but my dad told me we had a window blown off the house last year. It can also destroy the crops that you're growing, and let's not forget the increased chance of landslides. So bottom line, you gotta be prepared for this kind of stuff. Right, let's quickly go through some immigration stuff. I didn't really want to get into it in this video because I could literally make a whole separate video on this kind of stuff, but it's worth mentioning because it's kind of important, so just give me 2 seconds and we'll just rush through it. If you're not a citizen yet, go ahead and get the process started. I know it sounds kind of obvious to some people, but it's one of those things that is just 10 times easier if you get it done before you get here. Do not book a one-way flight without proof of citizenship. They will not let you on the plane. When I flew out, they actually almost denied me boarding until I pulled out my citizenship paper, and that's because I don't have an unconditional landing stamp in my passport. If you're planning to ship stuff, then go online and see if you qualify as a returnee resident after you got your citizenship. It'll help you dodge the insane extra charges that you would have to pay otherwise. Also, there's actually a lot of things that are way more expensive in Jamaica due to import fees, certain electronics, specialized equipment, so it actually might be worth buying a lot of things that you're going to need before you get here. Also, and I beg you, listen to me, research the shipping companies before you just go and pick one, because I've heard some horror stories. Even we had stuff that was either lost or damaged when the shipment finally came in. Gonna leave it there for now, but if enough people want a full breakdown on it, then I can make a separate video. Just let me know in the comments. Anyways, moving on. I've noticed that in a lot of homesteading or off-grid content, starting from scratch tends to kind of be like the most common way of doing things. You know, like using your savings to buy a piece of land and then kind of building everything from the ground up. But there's actually another path that I think might be a bit more common in a place like Jamaica, and that's actually coming back to family land. The way that I said that makes it sound like some kind of amusement park. Anyways, yeah, people having family land or a family house to come back to in Jamaica, or even just the Caribbean in general, is actually fairly common. It's not like we're some weird group of rich elitists, by the way. It's just that things like buying land or building houses is actually a lot cheaper here. And a lot of older generation Caribbean people have gone away to like the US or the UK or Canada, you know, saved up some money there and then actually brought it back here to then build up a house or buy land. And in some cases it's just land that was passed down generationally anyways, and they're building upon that. So yeah, not everyone, but it is common enough to be a pretty normal conversation topic. This does leave an interesting conversation, though, for people coming back managing the pre-existing infrastructure. Basically just assessing the things that you are happy with, and then eventually changing things that you don't want. For example, in my last video I explained how we're staying on what's originally my grandmother's land. And since we're still in the process of trying to go fully off-grid here, we're happy with the fact that number 1, it's family land and not government land. Number 2, our running water actually comes from a spring. Actually, 2 springs. We did get a second line installed to connect to the other one. And number 3, we have plenty of space to grow our own food, and we can still buy from local farmers. Everyone's gonna have a different starting point, so don't beat yourself up if you're not doing things in a super specific type of way. This is kind of a random point, but I also feel like it would kind of be a lot harder to be in total isolation here than it would be if you were to go off-grid in somewhere like the US or Canada. Like, you ever see those videos where somebody's like, oh, I'm 1,000 miles away from civilization in the frozen wilderness? Bit exaggerated, but you get the point. I don't know, I feel like it could just be kind of like a mix of things, you know, because it's like, it's a smaller country, there's no real, like, extreme climate, maybe just, like, the history of these kind of areas in general. But you can, like, genuinely go really far out here and still find a decent amount of people living there. To be fair, living off-grid doesn't necessarily mean being disconnected from everyone. So, these are just a few things that I wanted to bring up to kind of just give you an idea of things to think about when you're thinking of making a move like this. There's a lot more, but I really didn't want to like overload you guys with information, so if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments and I'll try and answer them the best I can. Also, just genuinely kind of curious, is anyone here that's watching trying to go off-grid like in another country or already gone off-grid in another country? Yeah, just let me know in the comments. But yeah, that's it for this one. I'll catch you guys in the next video.